Hello and welcome to the Modern Dandy. Today I want to talk to you about how much a quality wardrobe actually costs. Now you'll hear a lot if you're in classic menswear forums or watching classic menswear videos, invest in a quality insert item here, and you'll hear this quite often, and I wanted to actually estimate how much a full minimalist, so basic quality wardrobe actually costs. And the phrase invest in a quality and then item here actually kind of gets on my nerves, and you'll probably see why at the end of the video. So what I did was I calculated pretty much everything in a minimalist wardrobe you would need. Now I used the leading authority on classic menswear, the Gentleman's Gazette, what I consider the leading authority. Now, the Gentleman's Gazette has a lot of guides and things, so I compiled it in this way. First off, for how many items you should own, they'll sometimes have how many suits, how many dress shirts, how many shoes should a man own, or essential items. So assuming there's, like, for example, 12 essential ties, I figured 12 ties in total is what you needed. So along with that, if there wasn't a guide like that, I just kind of used common sense on how much you would wear and based it off of the other clothes you have, so that's kind of what I did. Now for the price, sometimes the Gentleman's Gazette will have guides on $100 item versus a $1,000 item, and even then they'll often say the $1,000 item isn't as good as you can get, but it is quality, so I took the $1,000 item. And if that's not the case, then I would either look in Fort Belvedere, because assumedly those kind of products are what they would promote as quality, or I ended up looking at Brooks Brothers, because that's kind of a famous classic menswear brand that's known for quality, and they recommend it sometimes. So, let's get started on this. So first off, suits. Well, they recommend having 3 suits if you're not really into classic menswear, but you wear a suit sometimes. And the price for that ends up being about $1,000 each. So that's about $2,000. Now I did factor in tailoring. I was really pretty generous, I feel, with the tailoring. I made a full suit $100. I've been to tailors who will charge $80 for a suit coat, but for me, my tailor that I had was really good, really inexpensive. She only charged about $25 for a suit coat and about $20 for taking in the hem of trousers or taking in the waist. So that's kind of where I factored it in, about $100 per suit, and you'll kind of get from there. Now they recommend 3 suits, but they also recommend one should be bespoke for when you really need to impress people, and that costs about $3,000. However, there really isn't tailoring involved, so in total that's $5,200. Now I look at shirts. They recommend having 10 shirts in a minimalist wardrobe. Again, this is for a minimalist classic menswear wardrobe. And that ends up, because they say that it should be about $300 for quality, being about $3,000. Shoes, they recommend having 4 shoes, $500 each. That makes up $2,000. And a bespoke shoe, they also recommend. You'll find that in one of their expensive items worth every penny video, and that's about $4,000. And I looked at ties, so that ended up being $1,560, yes, $1,560, because ties on the Fort Belvedere website are about $160, I think, each, and so I multiplied that by 12, which they recommended in 12 essential ties for every man. Let's see, bow ties, that's completely separate, $1,100. There was nothing for ascots. I guesstimated, and I put it at you only need about 5, you're not going to wear it as often, so $800. Now, sport coats, they recommend you having. They don't really recommend you having, actually. There's none that they actually say, well, you should have this many. But I estimated if you have 3 suits, you'll have 3 sport coats. So that ends up being about $500 each for $1,500. And the tailoring ends up being $150. Blazers, you only really need 1. And they put the best quality in a guide for best blazers under $500. The one that was right under $500, I think they recommended from Brooks Brothers. And that was $500. It was right on the cusp there. Now, for trousers, I guesstimated you need 10, because you're wearing these every single day, and that's kind of where I figured that would factor in. Sorry about that noise in the back. So that's about $2,000, and then tailoring is about $400. Now, belts and buckles, you can have actually separate buckles on the Fort Belvedere website, but belts are, I think, about $160, so that's about $800. I estimated you need 6 pairs of braces, $720. Cufflinks. Now this is where it's really expensive. I only did about 6 cufflinks because really when you look on the website, they often recommend having gold, silver, and they have some basics there. So assuming you're not going to wear that many cufflinks, you have a small collection, you only need 6, but that factors into $2,190 if you buy it new from Fort Belvedere. Tie bars and collar pins, actually only $120 for gold and silver, one of each. Socks. Now, I actually had to look how many socks just a man should own on a basic wardrobe, and it somewhere ended up being around 12. Now, the socks are $40 each on Fort Belvedere, so that's $480. Pocket squares, that ends up being $720 if you want around 10 to match with your ties and bow ties. Oh no, we're not done yet at all. We still have hats to cover, because those are part of a classic men's wardrobe. I again guesstimated, and my total calculations were for 3 quality fedoras, 2 quality Panamas, and 2 flat caps. They never really recommend as you should have anything like boaters, Homburgs, top hats, really none of that. So I factored that in. However, quality fedoras are expensive at about $300 each. So this ends up being at about $1,400. And yes, I factored into account that flat caps are only about $100. Now, what about overcoats? Well, I put this into 2 categories because in expensive items worth every penny, they actually recommend having a Burberry trench coat. I'm pretty sure I've seen that, but they have recommended Burberry trench coats before, and a polo coat from Ralph Lauren. These end up being about $1,000 each, and if you factor in other overcoats from Brooks Brothers, that is in total $3,000 for overcoats. Now, gloves, about $800. A single wallet, $300 for quality. I threw in a shoehorn and an umbrella, which is $150 total. Not exactly clothes, but clothes adjacent. Now, we're still not done. We still have casual wear to cover, because they recommend having things like polos, and I looked at that at Brooks Brothers. I only figured you needed 3, $270. Shorts, $210, again 3. A quality pair of sneakers from Brooks Brothers ends up being about $400. Boat shoes for 1, only $200. Swim trunks, $160 for 3. So now this is kind of everything here. I have kind of glazed over a lot of this, but the total calculation for a basic quality wardrobe is $31,780. So what can you do with $32,000 estimated there? Well, I actually made a bit of a list on things you can do with $32,000. You can nearly put a kid through college. You can absolutely pay for a 4-year out-of-state tuition, and it pays for a good deal of the room and board. Not all of it, that's about $37,000, but you are set for your kid's college. You can feed an impoverished family for 72 years, for maybe their entire life. You can provide food for an impoverished family. I mathed it out. I looked at a charity online. It costs about $36 for a month of food for an impoverished family. You can invest in 3 rental properties, and you can receive a few $1,000s per month, or you can invest in 1 big rental property, however much you want to split it, but you can receive that for the rest of your life. You can buy 10 inexpensive cars. I'm not quite sure why you would want to do that, but you can. And you can buy 100 tickets to the Vienna Opera Ball. You can bring your entire neighborhood to the Vienna Opera Ball, everyone in the neighborhood, a big neighborhood, in an entire apartment building. Or you can buy one every year and you're set for life. Now, this is where, for me, the whole idea of invest in quality, this kind of gets a bit irritating. Because, sure, investing in quality is fine if you're only wearing t-shirts and jeans and all that. Sure, invest in decent quality. When you're into classic menswear, you are not really investing in just 1, 2, or even 3 garments that you're wearing. You are investing in 12, 13 different garments that you're wearing. You have to have a decent sized rotation. And again, this is just for a minimalist wardrobe, assuming you actually want to be dandified, you want to be wearing a suit every day, or even you're a CEO, the Gentleman's Gazette recommends 10 suits. And if you use that times 3 plus 1 mathematical equation for the entire wardrobe, if you really want to go full on board classic menswear, that's $110,000 in the ballpark. I didn't actually math it out, but that's around where you're sitting. And you can buy a house for that money. You can do a lot with $110,000. You can buy crazy luxury. You can buy your own custom car, I think, for that kind of money. I may be wrong. Now, again, I'll add a few disclaimers here. This math isn't exact. It's not perfect. I'm sure there's some parts where I probably made mistakes. And if you buy used quality items, you're gonna save a lot of money. Although even still, you're gonna be spending about $300 per suit, plus tailoring. And if you actually want to go full on in classic menswear and wear suits every day, it could go right back up to $32,000. So this is why I said this in a previous video, just a couple videos ago. I think that it's alright to not always invest in quality. And if you have the money, if you're a multi-millionaire who can go to Savile Row or buy Ralph Lauren Purple Label with no issue in their bank account, sure, do it. I'm not judging you. And again, with all these calculations, what you can buy with it, it's your money, not mine. It's your choice what to spend it on, obviously. But I think that there are better places to put your money in with things that will get you much higher returns than classic menswear. And I think considering it an investment, unless you count stuff like watches, which actually can increase in value and you can sell them higher, isn't really the best way to consider it. And I think it's very important to not look down on people who aren't wearing expensive brands or bespoke suits, because people are just wanting to look good, and you can look good on a budget. So in conclusion, I think it's important not to push for everyone to be investing in quality everything. The cost can mount higher and higher to an extraordinary amount, considering just how many garments a classic wardrobe has in it and just how many things you're wearing at once. Now, for me, I know I have bought a lot of things from cheaper brands, from things like Joseph A. Bank, things that classic menswear communities really don't recommend. And while it's not necessarily the best quality you can get, I still look good and my wardrobe isn't nearly the cost of a minimalist recommended price for a classic wardrobe. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.